Hello, now I'm going to show you how do you do the access control of web services. So web services are invoked from clients. Their services are executed in a server. You need to guarantee that the web services are only invoked by by clients that have the correct rights. To have the correct rights, the clients need to first to authenticate in the system, and by authenticate, you provide a password, a username, and a password, and the client receives a token. This token is used afterwards in every invocation. You send a token, and the token is verified for two different objectives. First, that is a valid token. So when you invoke a web service, Spring will read the token and sees if it is valid. Okay, for instance, you have a time validity for the token, for instance, and as well if it corresponds to a user. Okay, so a user in the database, and after you verify that the token is valid, so after authentication, you get this principal in the request, and you can use it actually to identify who has done the who's invoking the web service. The second thing is authorization. And by authorization now is to see if this person that was authenticated has the correct rights to invoke the web service. And in Spring Boot, the way to implement this authorization is with this one of the ways, but the one we are going to use is with this pre-authorized tag. And the approach they follow is what is called role-based access control, which means that each user, when you register the user in the system, you get a role. Actually, in our system, you have the student role, the teacher role, and the admin role. And the first thing you can check is, so when you get the token, you put the role in the token, and you can check, or when you authenticate with the token, you get that role, or you verify what is your role. And the first thing you can check is what is the role of the invoker. In this case, what we are saying is that only users that are invoking this web service, only if they have the student role they can invoke it. If they don't have the student role, it's not possible to be invoked. Another thing is this as permission. This as permission here is based on the decision whether you can be authorized to invoke the web service is dependent on the type of the parameters, specific information related with the request. In this case, it's not enough to be a student, but you need also to be a student of this particular course execution. And so the rule is to say that you give the course execution ID that was there in the pass expression, and you do this rule that is execution access rule. Okay? So whether this is deeply implemented inside the framework, and so you don't need to change it because it was implemented at the beginning when we start implementing the application. You define the roles, and now it's you just need to check it. Here it depends on the particular service you are invoking and on the information. In this case, sometimes you need to implement these rules. Okay, so I'm going to show you where the rule is implemented. If you move here, you go to configuration, you have tutor permission evaluator. And the tutor permission evaluator is a component that implements permission evaluator, which is a Spring Boot class. And in this component, we define our rules. And the rules are implemented in this as permission. And this as permission method has three arguments: authentication, where you have the object that represents the result of authentication. So actually you get the user ID here. And then you have the target domain object and the permission. These two objects correspond to these two here in the rule. Okay? So let's see what happens here. Actually, if the target in our case is an instance of integer, and actually it is an integer that we receive there. Okay, this is an integer. If it is of integer, we execute these rules. Which rule are we going to execute? We are going to execute the execution access rule. So the execution access rule is this one. And now what happens? This returns the boolean, okay, and should return true in order to provide authentication. What are we checking here? Provide the authorization. We are checking if, given the alt user and the course execution, you're going to see if the course execution ID is inside the course executions of the alt user. So basically, we are checking if it's enrolled in the course execution. Okay, and if it returns true, and you can proceed. You can basically execute your service and your web service and get the result. If it is false, you get a 403 error, and that is deny access. Okay, I think that's pretty much this.